At least 13 people have been killed and 45 are injured in a terrorist attack in Iraq's Salahuddin province. Local authorities said ISIS militants attacked a funeral at a village near the town of Yathrib. They said the terrorists also targeted a nearby checkpoint, killing 3 policemen. In a statement, the provincial governor condemned the deadly attack. He said security forces will launch an investigation into the incident to bring the perpetrators to justice. Meanwhile, in a statement, the military confirmed a number of victims but did not provide specific figures. The military said it will provide details once an investigation is complete. And for more on this, we are joined by Mr. Yadgar Ismail, a political analyst joining us from Iraq. Mr. Ismail, thank you for your time at Indus News. First of all, the American troops haven't left Iraq yet. Is it a coincidence that such attacks pick up pace every time there is a conversation about the U.S. exit?
Well, thank you for having me. An excellent question, actually. So, for example, these discussions that were held in Washington on the withdrawal of the U.S. troops, the combatants, the military forces, that fighter forces, well, there was some understanding between the Iraqi government and the Washington government. But then the issue is whether these insurgent groups in Iraq, even the radicals or the extremist groups, ISIS, on one hand, and on the other side, the insurgent groups are happy about that, or even if they believe that the American troops are withdrawing. So this is this issue. Besides, I mean, even it was evident and clear that some of the U.S. forces will remain, but their mission will change reportedly. So what is that mission all about? Is it only training? Is it only about I don't know other tasks? So this is still from the point of view of these groups is doubtful. So the groups like Resistance and others that they call themselves Resistance or Al-Muqawma, they have vowed to continue attacks on the U.S. troops as long as they remain. So as if these negotiations have meant nothing to them. So now all we can do is to see whether the Iraqi government has any influence or control over these groups, or it has the capacity or the capability to fight those groups or protect at least the American troops and international troops until they withdraw by the end of the year.
So Mr. Ismail, do you think Iraq's military is competent enough to combat such threats at its own in future?
Well, there's a little bit of a complexity when it comes to the Iraqi troops. You know, to what extent are they capable? I think if they are all sort of have a mutual goal or objective, they are to some extent capable to do so. But then because they are not controlled nor even under the same umbrella, maybe allegedly they are under the commander of chief, but then the prime minister, but then of course they get their influence or their commands from private militia leaders, from private groups. I mean, reportedly there are about over 60 groups. I mean, we are talking about the Iraqi army on one hand, and on the other, we have all these militant groups that are sort of have a religious definition as well. So it's really not easy to combine all these forces and fight the threats. In some cases, the threats are not really mutual. For example, whether we are talking about the southern provinces and then the central provinces and the Kurdish region. So to what extent these can all cooperate and have an understanding? Of course, if they find a mutual ground, they definitely can combat any sort of threat internally, because they don't lack much, in terms of military equipment, in terms of experience, if we are talking about the capability of the military forces, because they have been in battle with ISIS for over 6 years now, and before them other threats. So now the question is whether they can come along or come together. Or perhaps there's the third equation here. If the U.S. withdraws, what will happen? Is it going to be like Afghanistan, or will be there more insurgent groups? So this is also under the scrutiny of the officials and the people in general.
So, Mr. Ismail, you just alluded to the fact that there are a number of, in fact, dozens of insurgent groups over there. So here is a supposition in case there is an uncontrollable surge in terrorist attacks after the U.S. withdrawal. So what would be Iraq's options?
Iraq, again, I mean, it does require, at least under the current circumstance, require some international support and help in terms of perhaps some of the military equipment, some of the training, and also let's not forget the unification of the armed forces. Some of these armed groups or militias that they are called are accused of having regional influence on one hand, and on the other, they do not really have a basic mutual understanding amongst themselves. So that is the issue for Iraqi government. First, to unify those groups is a very, very, gigantic, ginormous challenge for the Iraqi government post-U.S. withdrawal. And the other challenge is perhaps even the neo-ISIS may also rise. Let's not forget the fact that these people, specifically in Sunnistan, the Sunni areas, they feel very unrepresented. Even they do not, consider those Sunni representatives of the government their representatives. So they may be quite vulnerable to be manipulated easily by those insurgent groups and by the radicals and even ISIS to sort of, take their ground and take the fight on the government. So even the possibility of a military coup, to what extent the Iraqi government can be capable. Some of the groups think if the issue withdraws, perhaps the issue will be terminated, then the occupiers are out of sight of the country, but then the other groups believe that they are underrepresented, misrepresented, then they should also have their own say. So since the creation of Iraq, the post-colonial Iraq, we have seen many insurgent groups. We can say 0.5 now. The 0.5 insurgent groups, they want to name or reshape Iraq under their own definition of what Iraq should look like. So previously they attacked the USA, and after them they attacked the Iraqi government post 2007. Then in the 70s and 60s, the Kurdish insurgent groups, of course, fighting for equality, justice, and then also the 0.1 fought colonialism. Now it is really 0.5. So these groups think that they should reshape Iraq in their own image. So that is the biggest threat now.
Mr. Yadgar Ismail, thank you very much for talking to Indus News. We really appreciate that.